record and get started. As we previously mentioned, 12 o'clock straight up. So let's get going. I did miss October last month. As I mentioned, I was in a talk on, hey Barnsley, I was doing a talk in Las Vegas, and it was on the exact same day. And I was thinking maybe there's some way I could pull off doing the Gratitude Infusion Mastermind and the talk and so forth. But it didn't work out. So I decided to skip October and get November. The next one will be December 6th and so forth. So anyway, but it was a lot of fun. And I did have the good fortune of having hey, Derek Lord, I did have my younger son that came with me. But before I get to that, I want to show you a quick little video that he did, a little testimonial that was kind of cool. But so recognize some people. We got some new people here too. So this is called the Gratitude Infusion Mastermind. Thank you so much for coming. It's all about the advantages of a gratitude mindset. I did that talk down in Vegas a couple weeks ago, and I do usually 4 or 5 virtual talks a month. And now back to, as I was saying to John, back to at least 2 or 3, well, maybe 1 or 2 in person, which are really nice. But and if you have your cameras on, fantastic, because I like to get thumbs up and high fives. If you can't, you can do a virtual one if you're traveling or don't have your camera on for whatever reason. And as I mentioned, we're opening at 11:50 and try to be really sharp with time, start right at 12 and then end at 1 o'clock. And I always hang around a little bit at the end if there's any comments or questions that come up after that. So for those that don't know, I know a lot of you, but who am I? I am David George Brooke, that gratitude guy. I've been speaking, teaching, and coaching for about 10 years now about gratitude, and just have really enjoyed having an impact on people. I used to work at Nordstrom for a long time. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is some of the lessons I learned from Nordstrom is kind of our content pillar for today. But got into speaking and just really enjoyed impacting people's lives and had some tragedies along the way. And so gratitude ended up being the thing that really kind of bailed me out, if you will, and gave me a real advantage to have some mindset or some way to deal with some of the things that happened to me. So, and if you do have a piece of paper or a pen, I generally do one exercise just on something you can write on. And then we'll have one breakout room for 15 minutes. I just was putting the links in the chat. I'll put them in there again, but there's 3 questions that'll be in there, or you can do your own too, whichever you prefer. And as I mentioned too, I always really encourage feedback. It's really interesting to me as a speaker. People always tell me, so can you send us your slides? Do you have your slide deck? Where's the deck? And do you have the thumbnail drive? And I go, no, I don't do any of that. When I speak to people, and I like to look at people. I do a lot of exercises and things like that. So I love the feedback. I love the comments. I love people that are asking questions and that kind of thing. It is the first Wednesday of the month, as I said. Going forward, the next one will be December 6th. Registration is on Zoom, and that is in the links. And then a typical agenda is, we used to have time for introductions. As it's continuing to grow, I won't have time for that anymore, but I have a sort of a content pillar that I like to teach, and that is something around gratitude. I've decided this time I'm always going to have a little bit, at least the first 2 or 3 minutes, about a gratitude journal. I think it's so important. This writing down, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. If you write about it, it empowers you. It's so important to have things that give us these coping mechanisms that we need. So there's the content pillar, and then a little different exercise each month, a couple of questions and comments. The breakout rooms will be for 15 minutes, probably 2 or 3 people per room. Probably we'll do 3 maybe today. And then I have 2 or 3 questions, and they can relate to today's information. Is going to be about Nordstrom, because I learned so much from Nordstrom. So really, really helpful to my career and just in general, personally and professionally. And then we'll talk about any takeaways from the breakout rooms. And then we'll talk about anything else you learned around that. And then in the chat, I have links. I've got my contact information. You can purchase a gratitude journal in there. There's a complimentary coaching call. There's my Monday morning minute sign up. People get a 60-second video every Monday morning. And then I would generally had some reviews of books or different things like that in there as well. So as I mentioned, for those of you that may not have seen me, which I would imagine would be a lot of you in person, I'm really, as I was saying to John Tonzik, I was really fortunate to get back on the stage again and start speaking live, because it's just, I just have missed it because of the pandemic and everything that happened. And so it was so different. And so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was down in Las Vegas, and this was this Credit Management Association of America or something like that. Anyway, I had a friend of mine do the video. It was actually an hour and 15 minutes, 75-minute keynote. And it was called Neutralizing Obstacles Through Gratitude. And the interesting thing is that, gosh, I sold a lot of books, a lot of merchandise. And it was just so much fun to be back, and people come up, can I give you a hug? Can I take my picture with you? Can I buy some gratitude journals? And so then Scott, my videographer, videotaped the whole thing. And then he did about 8 or 9 testimonials. And for those of you, you don't have to have kids, but if you have kids, this will mean something more to you. But this is my 29-year-old son, his testimonial right after the event.
I don't either. Are we live? We are broadcasting live. Broadcasting live. Well, I just got finished seeing that gratitude guy here in lovely Las Vegas at the Sahara. Gotta say, it was a life-changing moment. It's been a lot of time since I've seen my dad speak, over about 8 years since he's pursuing his dream. And I gotta say that he gives tangible things that people can take home and get to transform their lives with gratitude. And I highly recommend, whenever you have a chance, please follow him on YouTube, TikTok, and follow his message, because he just wants to go out there and help everyone that he can through spreading his message of gratitude. So thank you so much. And I love my dad.
So that was one of my, thank you. That was one of the highlights of my trip. And as he said, spreading the message of gratitude. And that's where, as I said, before I get into the content pillar for today, which is actually, I'm going to have part 1 and part 2 on Nordstrom, because I learned so much from Nordstrom and many, many things about how to manage people. And I've said for many years that the most important thing that you can do to manage people and to raise children is set a good example. And Nordstrom set a great example for how to manage people. And it carried over into my personal life as well. But I do, before I get into the Nordstrom piece, I want to just talk briefly about this gratitude journal. I'm going to bring this up every time, every month, and just for 4 or 5 minutes. And yes, you can get the link in the chat, and you can get this exact one. It's called That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. But if you get a spiral notebook or anything else, I don't really care. I mean, it's nice. This has a format to it. It's got a template where you can kind of see how to fill it out and stuff. And it says gratitude today, and it says the day and date and the daily number, something we've talked about before, where you kind of assign yourself a value. And then a couple of lines for special events, which is, so you don't have to have a diary, or current events, or special occasions, rather. 4 or 5 lines for what you're grateful for. 2 lines down here for which was the highlight of your day yesterday. I typically write in the morning, so it would typically be on yesterday. And then the right-hand side is your gratitude intentions for what you're grateful for that hasn't even happened yet, because you can program your brain to make sure that you can be heading in the right direction. And you can see, I always like to show people that kind of, ever since this kid came up to my book table and he says, is this your gratitude journal? I've said this before on Gratitude Mastermind. And he goes, I go, yeah. And he goes, can I look at it? And I said, yeah, don't look at it too closely. And he kind of thumbs through it and he goes, wow, you write in this every day. I said, were you at the conference? Were you just in the room? I mean, did you hear me talk? Or did you just walk in? I mean, of course I write every day. So here's today. And even up in the lower or upper left-hand corner, it says GIMM today, Gratitude Mastermind. So you got to set a good example, and it's all filled out and makes such a big difference. And the reason why I'm going to continue to bring it up for 4 or 5 minutes once a month is because I don't know about you fine folks, but I come across a lot of people that are struggling, and anything from personal, professional, physical, mental, emotional, financial, all the LY things, financially, all those types of things, they're all having a hard time. And to me, that one of the first things I want to say to them is, do you know how to be grateful? Have you gotten a gratitude journal? Have you written in the gratitude journal? And I'm always fascinated by, I try not to be, I can occasionally be a smart ass. I try not to be, but I just find it interesting, people, to me, that they'll say, did you write in the gratitude journal? Okay, well, you see, well, here's the thing. So what's the story with, well, see, you don't understand. I go, no, here's what I do understand. I understand that whatever you're going to tell me right now could be classified as an excuse, because to me, that this is this tool, this item that we can use. And then also there's something about writing it too, because people want to say it into the microphone and talk text to talk or talk to text and all that kind of thing, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But the thing that's interesting is that in here, there's a little saying in the beginning that says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And it's something that's so important. I am so grateful to Debbie Lewis and John Toxic for always being the first people on the call. Whatever it might be, it plants it in your brain. And let me tell you, when you get to be my age, there's enough things in your brain that need to be exercised. And people talk a lot about exercising their bodies and all that kind of stuff, which is very important. But you could argue that a good body without a brain isn't very helpful, and vice versa. So exercising that brain, they say when you get up to these ages, do the crossword puzzles and do all, and that's all true. But when you write it, and then not to mention, these last about 3 or 4 months, I look back on mine sometimes and I think about, what was I thinking on that day? And in fact, I just flipped back here to 10:15, very sick, 103 degrees fever. And I haven't been sick in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something. And I had a fever about 2 weeks ago. It wasn't COVID. I tested for that. I kind of thought it might be that. But anyway, but the point is, writing it plants it in your brain, and it's so very important. So I cannot say enough about the value of having a gratitude journal. And even if you say something into a microphone and it types it, that's fine, just anything, but you're focusing on your blessings and abundance. It's just so important. This exercise we're going to do today in a little bit, in about 5 or 10 minutes, is designed to focus on what's happening right now in your world. And it's so important to know that if you focus, everybody knows 2 people go into a hospital with the same disease, the positive attitude lives, the negative attitude dies. It's been proven over and over again. And yet we still have people, nobody in this room, of course, but we still have people that are negative and think that people must want to be around them. I don't. I mean, man, it's like, I live in Seattle. It's gray and cloudy half the time, but you know what? There's sun above those clouds too. And so it's important. And even my own father was not a very happy person. And I'd say, "Good morning, Dad." He'd go, "What's good about it?" And I thought, wow, what a great thing to say to a child. And I'd say, "But it's sunny out today." And he'd go, "What's going to rain tomorrow?" Like, man, I guess there's always going to be people that can just figure out how to be negative on something, which is really interesting to me, because again, it comes back to, you have a choice. You and only you have a choice every single day when you get up out of bed. You can get up on the left side of the bed or the right side of the bed, up, down, left, right, positive, negative, grateful, ungrateful. It's a choice that you have. And so anybody that tells you you don't understand, you might as well stop listening, because they're just making an excuse, because we all have control over this. We all get to have control over this. So it's so very important. So all right, with that said, I'm going to pop into this Nordstrom piece. This will be probably about 10 or 15 minutes. The reason I did this, I worked for Nordstrom for 15 years, and they had some phenomenal policies. A lot of people that are familiar with Nordstrom, they're having a bit of a struggle, like a lot of retailers are now, because of the online retailers and Amazon and so forth. But for a long time, they're the sort of the sought after retailer to go work for. And I was so impressed when I worked for them. I worked for them for 15 years, and they did something, I think it's in my notes here, but they never had you apply for a job. And some of you may know some of this stuff, some of it you may not. But to me, it was really interesting. And I thought I would make it for this month's pillar, because of so many things I learned from them. But one of the things is that you never applied for a job. You just never applied for a job. They would pick you, and they would ask 3 or 4 people, who's the best person in this or that department? We need a manager. And if 3 people said the same person, that's the person they'd call you and they'd say. And I had 9 promotions in 15 years, and it was so weird. You pick up the phone. This is Daryl Hume, the general manager. "Oh, hi, Daryl. How are you?" "Yeah, you're the new store manager of the Yakima store." And it was just, "Oh, okay. Be there tomorrow at 8:00. And so it was always interesting how that type of approach to things was so different than so many companies I work for. So some of the things that I wrote down that I think is so interesting about them, that came from the top and it filtered down to all of us that work there. Always ask a ton of questions and listen really carefully. I've talked about modules before. I think last time I mentioned in listening about how you can tell if somebody's listening or not listening by how, if they don't listen, they can't ask you the next question. When people go, Now, what I wanted to tell you, and I want to go, stop, hold on a sec. Did you hear anything I said? And all this is just shorthand for they want you to stop so they can talk more about themselves, which just cracks me up. So Nordstrom was really big on asking a lot of questions, always listening carefully. They were always making this question, how can I make your job easier? What can I do to make it better for you or less frustrating? Is there something? And they put things like, what if you were in charge, what would you do? And this wasn't just I rose up to be a store manager of 3 different stores, a small store, a medium store, and then one of those big mega stores in the malls. And it didn't matter what level you were at. They were always asking you, what would you do if you were in charge? And I thought that was so incredibly empowering. And what would you change? It's so important. They always, and the thing that always fascinated me is they would listen to you, but they'd also, now I'm a proponent of this works for me, this little half sheet of yellow paper. I put my notes on, here's all my to-do list for today, whatever. But I always have that with me. They always had a pad of paper with them. And they make notes on everything you said. And if you want to empower somebody, pay attention to what they're saying and notice that they're writing it down and think, wow, this must be important, which is really, really important. And that they kept saying, well, if you were in charge, what would you do? If you were in charge, what would you do? And they made you feel it's so important because you heard about with Nordstrom, customer service, the return policy, and somebody once returned a tire. That's a urban legend, which is actually sort of semi-true. Is in the Fairbanks store, and there used to be a tire store there, and then they built the Nordstrom, and so some old man or old lady or something brought a tire in and was confused. He didn't know where the tire store was, and they said, "Can I get a refund on the tire?" So they gave him his money back. It was like they had to have good customer service, but they always made that the customer was not the most important person at Nordstrom. The employee was, or the associates, as we called it, because happy associates, happy employees. And I know it's another thing too about people that complain. When I finally worked up to be a store manager, it was really interesting to me because people would call and start yelling at me. Are you the store manager? Yeah, I was just in point of view and I got the crumb. Nobody even paid attention. I think it's because I wasn't dressed in my fancy coat. And I go, I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith. Can you tell me a little bit more about what happened? And they would tell me and they just get all irritated. I know the Nordstrom family. And I always want to go, I know them too. So that means we both have that in common. That's great. You think you're going to get some special treatment or something? But the part that got me the most about it is not only would Nordstrom treat us just perfectly as employees and tell us to make sure that you do whatever it takes to satisfy a customer. Every single time, if an employee or if a customer rather had the worst problem in the world or the worst service and that kind of stuff, if they were nice to me as the store manager, I've driven stuff to Tacoma and Olympia and things 50, 60 miles away to get it to a customer as a store manager, just because the person was nice. So it was such a great reminder. The associates are treated right. They treat the customers right. And then if a customer has a bad experience, you can turn that customer around from being somebody who's not at all happy to maybe an advocate for you for life. So, but they'd always say this thing that the associates are always right. Well, how can that be? How can they always be right? And the way they approach that, they said, is, if you're right, that's great. You did what you had to do. Now, can I just tell you, next time, you might want to do it a little bit differently. You might want to go this direction. So you're always right. But they said the next time we'll have a whole different approach. And I'd say like somebody had a bad pair of slacks. And so I said, I gave him a free suit because he was so upset. And they'd say, well, next time, that's fine. Next time, though, don't give him a whole suit. Like give him a pair of slacks and maybe a pair of shoes or something. But I mean, a whole suit, that's a little on the generous side. But you had to do what you had to do. That's fine. So, and then something else that really impacted me is about becoming the friendliest person in the room. That was in the store rather, not the room. But that really impacted me on different positions that I went through. Is the friendlier you are, the more you like people, the more you say hi to people, the more you know people's names. I've always told people I'm really good with names. I typically do not forget names. And there's a lot of people that can't keep track of names. And they'd say their self-talk was terrible. They go, I'm terrible with names. And I go, you keep saying that. You'll always be terrible with names. Stop saying that. Just get better and make a point of it too. But they were so quick to recognize associates who had new ideas, because one of their biggest words they'd use a lot is brainstorm. We always need to brainstorm and come up with new things. And that taking those notes and brainstorming with employees built the self-esteem through the roof for employees, because you felt you were so important. And they had you've heard of the open door policy. Well, they had one that was real. And I remember walking into Mr. John, we called him John Nordstrom. He's the 3rd generation now, the 4th generation's running it. But I'd walk into the room and into his office, and he's a CEO, co-CEOs with two of his brothers. And there'd be all these famous people in there. Here's William Ruckelshaus and John Claude Keeley. And I go, what, aren't you a skier? Aren't you like an Olympian and stuff? And so these are their friends, and they go, oh, Dave, say hi to John Claude. Oh, nice to see you. I just saw you on TV last Sunday, and so but you were always welcome, which I think is so, so very important. Cross training wherever you can, wherever you could get different training so that you knew other people's jobs and they knew your jobs was important. And then the customer correspondence situation. I was on Suzanne's call this morning, growth intentions, and I was thinking, email, calls, text, all these different things, introductions. It's just, there's so much to do there, but there's so many ways to communicate. And if you figure out, if you can't you don't have to pick just one, but there's a whole cross section. We know people text just for a certain reason. Other people call. People don't call as much anymore. There used to be voicemails, there's emails, there's DMs, there's all these different things. But the thing that Nordstrom always talked about, as they said, it doesn't matter what way you do it. Make sure you do overkill versus underkill, so people know you've kept them up to speed. The dress is almost ready. It's been within an hour. Now it's ready now. Do you want me to bring it to you? And that was really, really important, because this follow-through thing, I'm not going to talk about it today, but the follow-through that we don't see as much anymore is just sad to me, because it's just, people don't get back to you. The term ghosting, that's sort of my kids' term, generation's term. And I just think the person never got back to me. And I think it's so bizarre, because if you just get back to people, it'll return to you in spades, but you do have to admit along the way, it's kind of frustrating too. So cultivating exceptional customer service. You heard nothing but about customer service from Nordstrom. They had all sorts of awards, and they do all sorts of sales tracking. If it matters, if it matters, you measure it. And so there was all sorts of metrics. I was in a department where there was a guy that sold more suits than anybody else in the company in downtown Seattle. So I knew out of 10 or 12 salespeople, the only thing for me to do is to get to the number 2 position, because I was never going to catch this guy up at the top. But once I got to that number 2 position, I started getting noticed, and people started saying, gee, we may want to promote you, and so forth. Another thing they were huge on, which again is just part of this listening thing, is they would never interrupt. I was always fascinated by that. And not only would they not interrupt, but they did something else that was just really remarkable to me, is they'd never answer the question for you. They would keep asking questions, and at some point you'll answer your own question. And I'd say, well, Mr. John, what do you think we should do with all these slacks? Well, what do you think we should do, Dave? Well, then maybe I should put them over here. Why do you want to put them over there? Well, that would get more traffic. Well, should we put them in a big display? Well, we have all the colors that way. And it was just constantly digging deeper and deeper to getting to a better answer. And it was so important, because what happened is that you would end up figuring out that yourself. And then, of course, that empowers you to think, gosh, I think the chairman of the board of Nordstrom just let me be get the perfect answer. And all he was doing is just encouraging me to ask the right questions or answer the questions that he was asking. So big time on hard work. There's a lot of people talk about the latest generation and some of the things going on in the Gen X and millennials and all this kind of thing. But the neat thing about Nordstrom is if you worked hard, you had incredible spoils, incredible benefits. I won free trips to Hawaii, and I'd get to fly over on the corporate jet and all these different things, all because of these contests that they did, which I thought were really cool. And then I mentioned how you get promoted and you just get noticed, and you don't say anything. You don't have to get in anybody's face. You just let your work do your talking for you. And then, of course, something I may have mentioned this last week, I mentioned on several masterminds in the past about the golden rule. I just still don't know. It's so simple. I mean, Webster's is the concept of treating others how you would prefer that they would treat you, is kind of the certain language. But it's so true. And I don't understand why people don't treat people right. And they talk down to them, or they treat them harshly, or sort of look their nose down to people. And yet, if you do the golden rule, and I think this also goes for, as I've said, not only managing people, but also raising children. And I've said many times, neither one of my sons smoke. I'm so glad, and neither do I. But I wasn't sitting there doing like this and going, I better not see you smoking, but I'm puffing away. And so sometimes it has a lot to do with the example that you set. Great eye contact, firm handshake, and a fist bump. Now it's more fist bumps for a lot of things, but they always would talk about look me in the eye and all those things we've heard before, but it just reinforced it all the time. A good firm handshake. Help people get promoted. Zig Ziglar, I think, was the one that said, if you want to be successful yourself, help other people get what they need to get. How fast can you change? I've told a story in the past about how when I was on the escalator and I was being told I was kind of stuck up, and I decided to change in an instant by being the friendliest guy in the store. And before that, I'd been walking around thinking I was hot stuff, carrying my little briefcase and my shiny shoes and my little perfectly tied silk tie and whatever. And somebody said, well, you think you're hot stuff. And I snapped my fingers and changed. And that's how fast I changed and became the friendliest person in the store, which I mentioned before. So another thing that's really big, you don't have to do this, but I think when you're managing and interacting with people is finding about their home life. Do they have a spouse, a partner? Do they have kids? Do the kids have soccer games? All that kind of thing was so important. And if you can, I know that I worked very hard to get a good memory. It takes practice, but if you set your intention, the biggest store I ever had 550 employees. And I knew not only all the employees in the store, but I knew most of the spouses' names. And in many cases, I knew the kids' names and knew they had a soccer game on Sunday. And then to talk to the person on Monday, how the child did in the game. You don't have to do that, but gosh, it sure makes a big difference. And then learning all the language, know the terminology is kind of across the board. Always try to get up to speed with that. And then lastly, effective communication. You know, we talk about communication so much. I mentioned learn to listen and listen to learn. They say leave your ego at the employee entrance. I learned that big time when I was thinking I was cool stuff. And always look for the good in all the associates. And, you know, what do I talk about with gratitude? It's the glass half full. I just don't know if there's been a better thing I've heard of before than the glass half full, because it's so true. And again, it comes back to how you look at it. But you want to look for the good of the associates, but also to remember that it is a thing about setting the example. You know, if I didn't get back to one of you and you emailed me or something, boy, what a hypocrite I would be. And it's interesting because I had this one manager, and I think it was men's shoes or men's suits or something. And he would get all the boxes of stock, would come in, and he had about 4 employees. He'd tell them to put them all away, and then he'd go up to the coffee shop. And so at some point, the manager, the employees kind of said, Mr. Brooke, you know, this guy, he's just up at the coffee shop. So I asked him, he goes, well, I'm the manager. I said, well, yeah. And he goes, well, I can be in the coffee shop if I want. I said, well, I'm sure you can. I mean, you think that's how you look at, but let me ask you this. Do you think it sets a very good example? And so he'd sit there, well, I never really thought of it. Well, maybe you should think about it, because maybe you should be getting there earlier and staying later and being the hardest worker in the group, and you'll get the best effect for your employees. And so management, MBWA, management by walking around. They always talked about walking around saying hi to people. And then the last thing is meet all the new associates, meet people as fast as you can, because when they come on board, they're a little bit nervous, and it's just a challenging time in the beginning when people are kind of scared and uncertain. So anyway, so there's my thing about Nordstrom. I'm going to do a little bit more next month, but I just learned so much from that company, and there's just a lot of good lessons in there. A lot of the gratitude to me is interwoven by how you treat other people, and are you grateful for the job you have and the people, that you work with, and so forth. So, okay. So any questions on the Nordstrom thing? Then we're gonna do a little exercise here. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Should I call on people? It's like today, David, takeaway from today from Suzanne. Yeah, I think Suzanne, any takeaways?
Takeaways? Write in my journal every day.
God, that's a good one. That's a good one for sure. So, all right. So here's what I want to do. And then I'm going to do this. Oh, Derek.
I got to tell you, that's wonderful. And I heard some stories about Nordstrom. The only thing I remember hearing in coach was somebody came in and their son had an issue where one foot was smaller than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So they were used to going in the store, and they were used to going in and buying 2 pair of shoes. And they got the 2 pair of shoes, they put them together, they go to the front, they get charged for 1 pair.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? He said, well, that's not your fault that we didn't have shoes that fit your son. And of course, needless to say, they went there forever after that. And was it true too? Was it Nordstrom that gave each employee the right to spend a certain amount of money on their own?
Yeah, no, and a lot of that, some of that is urban legend, but so many of the things the biggest thing that I got, and I was very fortunate to deal with the 4th generation. Pete and Eric are in charge now. They're 4th generation, but Jim, John, and Bruce were the ones that I worked for. And they also owned the Seahawks at the time for 10 or 15 years. And so I got to know the three of them pretty well. And I was in my 40s. They were probably all in their 60s or something like that. But anyway, so I got a lot of firsthand knowledge. But the biggest thing that they would tell you, Derek, that was some version of that is not only could you take care of things like that on your own, but it didn't matter what it was, because even if they would say later, I think I would do it a little bit differently, or not, not quite as generous or whatever, but you did what you thought you needed to do to take care of customers. And that's all we care about. So good job, keep up the good work. And so it was just a phenomenal positive attitude and positive workplace to work in. So thank you. Chris Kinney.
Hey everyone. So David, thanks for this. The thing that struck me, you talked about the golden rule. What I seem to recall, you have obviously much more intimate knowledge having worked there. But what I've sort of picked up on over the years about the stories from Nordstrom is that they really coached people to apply the platinum rule, which is not so much to treat people the way you feel you would like to be treated, but instead to treat people the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. I need to remember that, because I've heard that. And I think, well, gosh, what's better than gold? Well, platinum. And so now the platinum is as sort of as they would be treated. And it sort of was always assumed that we would know how they want to be treated. But you're exactly right. If you ask those good questions and listen carefully, you'll see how they want to be treated. And therefore would be the platinum part of it too. So,
David?
well, yes.
Mark here.
Hey,
Question. Mark. In the world, I love the idea of the management by walking around. Mm-hmm. And practiced that earlier in my career. What with today's so much remote management, so you have a bunch of people who are remote, staying in their homes, working out of their houses, whatever. How do you manage in those situations with some of that same philosophy?
Yeah, it's a good question. And ironically enough, I heard this on the news last night. Being from Seattle, you've got Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, Starbucks, Nordstrom, all these really well-known companies that started in Seattle. I think it was Amazon last night that said now they're demanding that these people come back to the offices, because the remote thing has been fine. It worked through the pandemic, and now everything, you hear the word hybrid a lot. But their whole point is there's still going to be collaboration and synergies. You can only get one way, and that's through person to person and back in. And part of it, I think, is driven by, I can't speak for other parts of the country, of course, but in downtown Seattle, there's many of these office buildings that are barely half full because people took off. And so they're now requesting that they're going to come back. So, but I think the other thing to me that sort of goes hand in hand with it, it's the same reason why I mentioned this at the outset, why I don't care for PowerPoint and I don't care for thumb drives and here's my slides. And it's so pervasive. I mean, every time I got to talk today, well, can you send us your slides? I don't have any slides. I said, I just talk to people and I just look at them, and then I've got some notes here that I can look at and so forth. But the main thing is I just want to be making eye contact and saying, making a comment. What's the red hat? Wait a minute. Is that an SC Trojans hat or is that a UCLA Bruins hat? I can't see quite there. Oh no, it's Anaheim Angels. So anyway, but the point is that getting people involved, and you can do that to a certain extent, but I think it's still going to be a challenge. It's still going to be hard to get people motivated when they're, and then not to mention, I thought what you're going to say too, is this, everybody's looking down in their devices. And I'd be walking around the store in this day and age, and everybody be looking at their phones when they need paying attention. So it's definitely a challenge to get the same level of engagement.
David, this is Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
And I was back at Nordstrom when you were. We just didn't know each other then.
That's right. That's right.
Mark, I just retired from Microsoft recently, and nearly everyone in my team of 300 plus people were remote. And I got to see over the years that I was there how different managers created a sense of belonging and, if you will, management by walking around. But it takes a lot more work, and it takes a lot more intention on the part of the manager to do that.
Yeah, good point.
But I agree, David. Nordstrom was a magical place when it was magical.
Yeah. And there's still many things, so much retail, big box retail and all that has changed a lot too. But there's so many things that I can take away from there still in this day and age, even though things are different now, but that are really nice. So, okay, before we go to breakout rooms, I want to do a quick exercise. What I'd like you to all do is grab a piece of paper or a pen, a piece of paper or a pad of paper or something like that. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds. And what I'd like you to do during this 60 seconds, get my clock here ready to go, is I would just like you to write down 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things that you've got going on right now that are great. Things that you're excited about, could be personally, could be professionally, could be family, could be projects you're working on. Anyway, just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things that are really going good in your life right now. Write those down and we'll be back in 60 seconds. Okay, and there's 60 seconds. And the reason I'm not going to have you turn it in or give it to anybody or whatever, but I think back about the impact that my parents had on me. And my mother was very positive, and she died when I was in my 20s of cancer. And my father later took his own life and stuff. But my father was so negative, and I just thought, back to what I said earlier, it's a choice that we make. So you'll say to people, well, how you doing? Oh, geez. I mean, I just mentioned I had 103-degree temperature 2 weeks ago and stuff but why do we go down that path? Nobody wants to hear your doctor's report or hear what the latest is from your latest checkup or whatever. But instead, what happens when we focus on the things that are really good? And if you look at that list of those things, what's going on? And again, it could be personal, it could be professional. It could be at work. Maybe there's a new contract that was just signed, whatever it is. But we tend to sometimes let those things slide away, and we forget how, things aren't too bad right now. And I think all you have to do is, which we all know, is turn on the news, and from Israel to Ukraine to you name it, to drugs. I mean, it's just the saddest. It's tough to watch all those things and try to be informed. And yet at the same time, you want to be informed, but not be on a total bummer. So if you can sit and focus on your blessings in abundance, I say all the time, gratitude turns what you haven't to enough. So very important. So that's why I did that. Just have that and just take a look at it. You can toss it or you can keep it or whatever, but I just think it's important. So, all right. So breakout rooms, 15 minutes. And then and I put them in the chat. 3 questions. Now you could have, I'm going to do 3 people per breakout room, and you can have your own conversation. Some people do. I love breakout rooms, and you might go a different direction, but the 3 questions I have is, what was your biggest takeaway from the Nordstrom info? Have you used a gratitude journal recently? There's that Gratitude Guys Daily Gratitude Journal. And then how has a positive mindset or gratitude helped you lately? So like even doing that little exercise, hopefully even might move you up a notch on the 1 to 10 scale. If you were a 7 today, maybe after writing those things down, maybe now you're an 8 or something, but it's about focusing on what is good. So, okay, so let me do some breakout rooms and we'll come back in about 15 minutes.
David, could you put them back in the chat? Could you put them back in the chat?
Oh, hold on a second.
Thanks.
A second. All right, hold on. Right, let's see here. Well, there they are. Un momento, s'il vous plaît. Yeah, I had a big link with everything, and it was with all the stuff, and I've never seen that before. It said it was too big for the space. Okay, there it is. What's your biggest takeaway from the Nordstrom info? Have you used a gratitude journal recently? How has a positive mindset or gratitude helped you lately? So those are 3. And I've been in enough breakout rooms that sometimes you kind of free form too, but assign automatically. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Looks like about 4 per room.
Dave,
What the hell?
may I beg 2 favors of you?
Yeah.
Because I can't. I think it's rude to. I usually don't show up at meetings unless I'm settled. But
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss your meeting.
Thank you.
I like your meetings; they make me happy.
Yeah.
Can you plug polarizing is tomorrow?
Oh,
Can
right.
you plug that and can you plug that in the pod for me, please?
Polarizing is tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific. And then the pod is, well, that's Fridays at 11, but I'll post that as well. I'm trying to think, do I have where can I get a handy link? I'm trying to think if I have an email from you. I can
You
get
do
it.
have an email from me.
Yeah, I'll go grab, well, I've got some time here. I'll go grab an email from you.
Thanks,
You know
Dave.
what
Appreciate it.
You bet. You know what I can't get over is it's just, and it's the way it is, but so looks like about 21 people today, 110 registrations.
I usually get 25% for all my events.
So that's about right. Because I did what you said. I sent out the reminder yesterday, the day before, today at 10, and today 20 minutes before it started.
Yeah, Jim and I got 35 people at our last event, which was our first event, and then 28 today. So I think it's the day.
Yeah, and
Something going on with today.
could be, but I think it just is. I like the idea. If you want 20 people to come to your party, invite 100. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. So
Yes, 25% is what my average is.
yeah, okay.
Because polarizing has 54 people on average and 300 signed up.
Jeez, man, oh man. I want to see if I can find this link. So,
Hank responded to it.
I have it under my Sajad file.
Sounds like the federal government. And then an interesting thought. Can I share an interesting thought with you while you're looking that up?
Of course.
So I've seen a few quotes, one by Einstein. This is relevant to what, the presentation you just gave.
Mhm.
One on Einstein and one that was like Nietzsche or something like that. It was a Stoic existential type philosopher. But I saw 2 videos on TikTok that Einstein, if you look up quotes on kindness,
Mhm.
it's pretty amazing. Einstein said it's like the sign of the most intelligent people are the kindest person in the room. And one of the really dark thinking philosophers said that the kindest person is usually the smartest person. But if you look up quotes on kindness, you'll find some really interesting people that you wouldn't think.
Trying to find this thing. Yeah, I gotta write that down. Kindness quotes.
You look up Hank, it might be easier because Hank responded to it.
Yeah, here's, okay, wait a sec. What's this? Please that's hop on my calendar. Oh, where's Hank? Here's, okay, Hank, here, hold on this. Where are you driving to?
To Pittsburgh for a business conference.
Oh, nice. Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprising some of my former clients.
Nice.
These 4 women get together once a year, and then they send me pictures. And I said, how come you never invite me? And they said, it's women only. So I rented the penthouse suite in the hotel where the event's at, and I'm going.
Nice. Nice. And here's the pod is Candle Pod or Candapod.
Yeah, CNE or CNA or CNE.
Oh,
Yeah,
CNE, that's what it is. Okay, so I got them both. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna put
Yeah, if
both.
you can plug those two things, I'd appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I will. See here.
You can say you're in it. Here's what you got out of it. That's what's most useful for me.
Okay. Chat.
It won't be in there if you put it when everybody's not in the room. They won't see it when they get back.
Well, they can see it though, right? Well, I can type it in and just hit enter when I'm ready.
Yep, that's cool.
Two groups.
You gotta get Jen and Roanne doing all this bullshit for you.
I know. Well, actually, it was funny. I didn't even say it, but it was my fault. But Jen sent me a bad link. And so I was one of those things. It was the Calendly link, but it didn't go through. And so I thought, oh, I got to get back to her. And then I didn't get back. I got back to her now. So we're on the calendar for next Thursday. These are two groups that I'm a member of.
I have a lot of people telling me I'm sending, or my people are sending bad links, and they all work for me. So,
well, this was weird because
on.
I checked it a couple of times, cut and pasted it and stuff. Both are very beneficial.
Wonder what's going on with the link thing. I think it could be a security thing. Because one guy told me the tech stuff, his security system blocked the link. He couldn't register because it wasn't SSL certified. It wasn't protected.
Polarizing. Here's polarizing. Okay, what I did is I there we go. Cut. Yeah, I got them both in.
Man, thanks. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, I'm going to go back to driving. I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, bud.
Thank you.
We're having too much fun talking in the other groups.
I'll have to remember that for next time. It's like, gosh, just having such a good time. Although I've been in many groups where I could go on all day long. It's really fun meeting everybody.
Yeah, it was fun.
Really good.
Looks like most of us are back here. Before I get reactions and just comments from the breakout rooms, I wanted to mention Sajad, a good friend of mine, hosts a couple of groups every single month, and actually does one called, I just put it in the chat. The second one is called Polarizing Networks. The first and third Thursday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I put the link in here. A great group of people, great speakers, and always come away with a lot of knowledge. And then the one in front of that, the CNE Pod, is a group I'm in on Friday, where a lot of good coaching and a lot of coaches that want to up level their business, which is very, very valuable. So I put those links in there for all of you to see as well. So takeaways from the breakout rooms. Anybody that has a something they'd like to share with the group? John Tonzik.
I met two new people today, which was wonderful, Patricia and Adam. So it was nice to have them in the group. And the thing, we all kind of came away from the Nordstrom story with the same thing. And we spent some time talking about that, about how important it is for people to be seen and to sort of, interact with them on a more personal level. And it's good to be reminded of that, I think.
Yeah.
As we forget.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, John. Kevin Connor.
I'm going to echo a lot of what John just said. I think it's easy to forget, and having a gratitude group like this is a great way just to kind of check in every once in a while and be reminded. Thanks for sharing stories like this and bringing the forum together. Management by walking around is something we've all probably heard, and just a reminder as to the benefits of just being able to see with your eyes and hear with your ears and in person.
Yeah,
Thank
excellent. You. Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Speaking of Kevin's, Kevin Barber, I'm sure has got something to add, given where you and I met from the all the teachings of Pacific Institute. Any thoughts, Kevin? Oh, you're on
mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Well, thank you for calling me out. I didn't really want to. I wasn't really dressed for the occasion, but thank you.
So I appreciate you being here. We don't get too formal when it comes to dressing.
Well, I was sharing with the two gentlemen I met in my group that how much I enjoyed the time we shared together at the Pacific Institute and the trainings we went through. And I just really admire what you've been able to accomplish in your life, and spreading, this kind of knowledge and sharing with people the way that you do is just a great platform. And I still love my journal, and I do it on a regular basis. And it's literally keeps me between the rails. It really does. So I'm very grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Well said. And it's important too, because I mentioned a negative father and a lot of tragedies. My parents, my wife, and different people have passed away, and it really, really helped me. But I think the thing that's interesting, one of the things I didn't say about Nordstrom, which it would be impossible for them to be able to equal this, is that I get told 3 or 4 times a week, you change my life. And whether it's the gratitude journal, talks, in person, virtual, whatever it might be. And it gets me emotional, like seeing that video from Connor where he says, I love my dad at the end. It's the same thing. And I didn't get that at Nordstrom. I mean, I had a lot of people that were very neat, but a lot of us here all work for ourselves or retired or doing your own thing. And it's just really rewarding when you can impact other lives. And as more people, as we get older, more people pass away, you're reminded of how fragile this whole thing is. And so what better legacy, if you ask me, than to have people remember what you've said or how you've supported them or how you've given them different modes. Or I always say this is one of the best coping mechanisms I've ever found. And let's be honest, there's certain people that don't want to be helped, and there's not much you can do about that. But I remember it was like Dr. Laura or something who was on a radio call-in show, and the lady somebody died, and she says, I was just so shocked by some of my friends that didn't come through for me after I lost my husband or something like that. And she says, well, let me ask you something. Did you have some people come through for you that you didn't expect? And she goes, yeah. She goes, why don't we focus on them? So I always think it's the same thing. I'm going to focus on the people that, just understand that you get this choice on your attitude every day. And so makes a big difference. So thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Dr. B.
Lower in my hand. So we had a great room, John's room too. And we talked about the importance of really caring, how very important it is to just really care. And people, I really believe you can tell when people don't. It's very obvious. You can feel it. You can feel it. And I wanted to share something. We didn't really get to the third question. We were talking about other stuff, about gratitude. But this weekend, I went to the funeral of my aunt and uncle, who I hadn't seen in really 13 years. But what was beautiful about it is that I got to go back to where my biological father, the church, the historic church, little church in Statesville, North Carolina, and I got to see my cousins who I haven't seen in over 40 years.
Wow.
And the recognition was immediate. My cousin turned around and looked at me and said, and she used to be blonde, now she's dark hair. And they live in Austria, which is one of the reasons I haven't seen them. Austria and California, they're like all over. But it was also because of all sorts of rancor in the family. But you see, I just let all that go. And I was like, of course I'm going to come because I loved your parents and I love you. So now we're in touch and I feel so grateful. And it's like that death, their parents orchestrated this,
Yeah, that's cool.
It's never too late.
Yeah.
Never too late to let go of our bullshit lack of forgiveness and really renew those relationships.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I think that sometimes people find that they connect with somebody again at a funeral and they think, or a memorial service or something. Why didn't we do this sooner? So well said. Well said. Suzanne.
Yeah, Chaim brought up a really cool topic in our room about not really being positive or negative. You're either moving away from pain or you're moving towards pleasure. And it was a good, interesting reframe for me, rather than thinking when I go negative, I have to turn and flip my script to positive. I can choose to move towards the pleasure or the positive instead. And it was really good. It was insightful. Thanks, Chaim.
Thanks, Suzanne. And I was thinking as I listened to all of you that same thing with some of the groups I'm in. Suzanne has a couple of groups and some of the other ones I've been that are so positive. You can't do it without people, without having that effect of everybody together. In the chat at the very top is the link to this Gratitude Mastermind. So if you want to share that with anybody, we're always looking to add more people that really want to get a monthly infusion. And it's amazing. And plus, I always think about too, you heard a couple of comments on, again, I'm in a number of these on any given week. And sometimes the most powerful thing, I like the speakers and I'm a speaker myself, but sometimes the most powerful stuff comes out of the breakout rooms. And it's just fascinating. And there's something about the non-intimidation factor of just 3 or 4 people versus talking in front of a bunch of people or something. So Mr. Derek Lord.
I just wanted to say thank you for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which I was just in a room with 3 wonderful ladies I would have never, ever met. And I can't thank you enough. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. So, well, it's 5 after. I like to be start and stop on time. So I'll let everybody go if there is anything else. Next month is December 6th. That's the first Wednesday of December. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you. If you can share that with people that you know that might benefit from this, all the more. But thank you all for participating. Thank you for the hour. I know it's times are, we're all under a crunch of getting a lot of things done. So carving out an hour once a month can be a challenge sometimes. So thank you all for being great guests and great participants. And we'll see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.